Hello, everyone. My name is Molly Hollibaugh, and today I'm going to do something with you guys that I call voice-guided Zentangle. And this is a class I've taught quite a few times before. It fascinates me and inspires me, and we have all been spending a little bit of extra time at home, I think, or most of us have anyway. And to me, it's been a great opportunity to look at things a little bit differently, to open up our ability to see what we're grateful for in this world and to pay attention to the messages that our world sends to us and just, I guess, stop for a minute and think and feel. And it's also a great time to Zentangle. And today I wanted to share with you this class, and I thought that this would be fun for our absolutely amazing Zentangle community to do together. So this class is a little bit different than a lot of the online classes that we do here at Zentangle because you're not going to really see me doing anything. In fact, for the remainder of this video, you will only hear my voice, and you will continue to trust everything that you put down as a deliberate mark that was supposed to happen. And I will reassure you that every mark that you put down was supposed to happen and that there's really no wrong way to do this. And I'm going to do my best to guide you and to describe each step. But if you interpret it different than how somebody else might interpret it, I want you to know that that's okay, and that sometimes that's how really beautiful expressions are seen and heard and discovered. And so I am going to be working here on a 3.5-inch square Zentangle tile, a white one, and using a black pen and having a graphite pencil and a tortillon. But you are welcome to use anything you have available to you. You might have a bunch of cardboard boxes from all of your Amazon deliveries, or perhaps you have an old paper bag or a newspaper, or maybe you have some Zentangle tiles you've been saving and you really want to use, or maybe you have something that I haven't mentioned yet. But whatever you have for paper, I want you to grab that. And like I said, we're going to be working in about a 3.5-inch area, so 3.5-inch square area. And I'm going to be using a black pen. So if you have a Micron, great. If you have some other pen, you're welcome to use that too. And if you have a pencil, grab that. And if you don't have a blending stump, your finger works really well. So I'm sure that we can do this together because, as they're saying, we're all in this together. So as we said before, this is a voice-guided Zentangle class, so I will try to repeat myself as much as possible. And since this is a video, I'm going to try to go through this the same way I would as if I were right there with you today. So the way I always start my Zentangle classes is I first get my materials ready, and I have my students do the same. So whatever materials you decided on, gather those in front of you. Pen, pencil, and paper is pretty good. And put those in a place that is comfortable for you to access. I like to clear the space in front of me so that there's nothing else distracting me. A nice table surface is great, or a lap desk, or the floor, or whatever works for you. But organize it a little bit and create a sacred space for you to draw in. Once I have all my materials ready, the second thing I like to get ready in my my drawing routine is to prepare my body. And I tell my students all the time that drawing is too a physical activity, and that we need to pay attention to our bodies and how we treat them when we're doing anything. And so maybe adjust your sits bones, maybe square up your shoulders and your body, maybe just gently roll them back to pay attention to your posture. Whatever it is that's comfortable for you, and maybe take note of that place you're at, because sometimes after a little time of drawing, you can lose sight of that place you started from. It's always good to go back to it and make sure that we're paying attention to our bodies. Once you have your body comfortable and you're ready to go, I then like to get sort of my mind and my heart ready for whatever it is I'm about to do. And sometimes for that means just taking some deep breaths. The first step in the Zentangle method is gratitude and appreciation. And we start with this step for many reasons, but it allows us to sort of just stop for a minute and recognize what it is in our lives, in our moment, in our world that brings maybe a smile to our face, maybe a sense of happiness, that sense of gratefulness. And what I've realized that it doesn't have to be these major, huge things, that sometimes it's the little things that are the big things. So today, perhaps you're grateful for the time to be sitting here and drawing along. Maybe you were grateful for the cup of coffee you had earlier. Or maybe you were grateful for the sun or the daylight or the little extra time to sleep. Whatever it is your personal sort of thing, and I hope that you all can find something to sort of latch on to today and inspire you and move towards finding another thing that you're grateful for. And of course, I always feel grateful for the breath, and I try to put that there as this amazing, amazing fuel that inspires me and refuels me and enlightens me, all these different things just with this breath that's free. So take a breath, take it slow, and remember that at any point in time you can always stop and take another breath and allow it to help you refocus or recharge. So once we've kind of covered all our bases here, I guess we should start drawing. So many of you have maybe done this along with me at a seminar or a workshop, but there's probably a lot of you that have never done this, and you're probably wondering how I'm going to do this. And I have to be honest, I'm never quite sure how it's all going to work out, but I trust that it will work out somehow, and I will hopefully get to see all the beautiful things we create. So I'm going to start with my pencil here, and I'm going to pick up my pencil, and I'm going to invite you all to bring it back to basics with Zentangle, and we're going to go step by step here, and I'm going to actually put 4 dots in the corners of my tile very lightly. Just a little dot in each corner so that only you probably can see it. We're not worried about it being perfect, just a little dot in the corner of your tile. Once you have your 4 dots down, I want you to ever so lightly connect those dots to create a border or a square. Again, just looking at your 4 dots that sit in the corners of the tile, and then connect them to create a border or a square shape. Not worrying about the pencil lines having to be perfect. In fact, a little bit of character is always welcome here in our Zentangle world. And once you have those 4 dots down and a border, I invite you to take a breath. Now we're going to put down on our tile what we call a string, and a string is something in Zentangle that we use basically to guide us toward how our composition is going to unfold and kind of suggest where we might put our tangles. And so today, for fun, we're going to do a super, super basic string, okay? And what I want you to do is to just focus for a moment on this space we've created with our square. And inside this beautiful square, I want you to create a large orb. And don't do anything just yet, because I want you to kind of think about it for a minute. I want this orb to fit I wanted to fill a good portion of the space, but maybe not all of it. And so for me, I'm fitting my orb in here, and it's big, almost the size of maybe a clementine. I don't know if you guys have them where you are. Clementine is a small orange or a lime. So maybe it's kind of filling your space, but not quite to the edges, or maybe it falls off so that it falls and goes behind some of the border. Whatever it is, it's a big, big circular shape. And that's going to be our string, just a big, big circular shape. A big orb, we say a lot of times. It doesn't have to be perfect. And it just sits beautifully in this square shape, and maybe not in the center, maybe kind of falling off the edges is fine. It leaves a little bit of negative space around it, what is beautiful too. All right. We're going to keep this really simple since you guys are maybe new to this. But I now invite you to pick up your pens, okay? And just for fun, I'm going to give you guys two different options here, okay? And this will create sort of a more interesting mosaic in the end. I want you to either pick inside the orb, or I want you to pick the space that was left behind inside your square. So you have, I guess, the orb, or you have the background space. And both are great, but I just want you to pick one right now, and you will never know which one I picked unless I post this tile later, but we'll talk about that later. But I want you to pick either the orb or the background space. And we're both going to do the same thing, both teams, background, orb people. And they're going to come out beautiful no matter what, but we'll have two different results. But you can't pick both because then you might have too many things going on. Well, you could, and you might prove me wrong, and that would be quite wonderful too. But just for starters, let's pick one. Once you've picked which space you're going to work within, I invite you to take your pen, and we're going to start with a tangle that's called Hollibaugh. Now, don't jump ahead yet, you people that know what Hollibaugh is. I want you to just take it slowly with me. And once you've picked your space, I want you to begin by laying down a stroke that stretches from one string point to another. So if you've picked the orb, for instance, I want you to take your pen and draw a straightish line stretching from one side to the other. If you've picked the space around it, draw a straightish line stretching from one string line to the other. So all of us should just have one straight line inked on our tile. Now I invite you to focus in on that one straight line. And I want you to create a second line a little bit away from it, maybe an eighth or a quarter of an inch away, a parallel line that creates a band or a bar. So take that first line and then draw a second line, a parallel stroke, maybe about an eighth to a quarter of an inch away. It should create a band or a bar. So again, wherever you're working, you should have two inked lines stretching from one string line to another. At this point, I invite you to turn your tile perhaps to look at what your composition is in a different way. And we're going to do the same exact thing we just did, with one exception. We're going to draw a line stretching from one side to the other. But this time, if you come across that previous band that we first drew, I want you to briefly pick up your pen and allow the line to fall beneath it, and then pick it up again and continue on, as if the line is beneath that band or bar you've already drawn. If that was confusing to you, I'm going to repeat what we just did so everybody's on the same page. So we started by drawing one stroke stretching from one string line to the next. Then we drew a parallel line that was about maybe 1/8 inch to 1/4 of an inch away, creating a band or bar that stretches from one string line to the other. Then we turned our tile a little bit, and we started to repeat that same thing, with the only exception being if we come across that previously drawn band, that we just pick up our pen briefly and allow the pen to pick up again on the other side. Once again, drawing a parallel line to create a bar or band, and also picking it up after a brief hiatus to sort of create the illusion that this band or bar falls beneath the first one we drew. So that's Hollibaugh. Hollibaugh is a collection of bands or bars or boards or whatever you want to call them, with each new one you draw falling beneath any of the previous ones. So I invite you to continue on stretching these straight lines from one side of your space to the other. If you're drawing within the orb, I invite you to stretch from one side of the orb to the other, these beautiful bands or boards, and then slightly turning your tile each time so that the band or board falls beneath any previous bands or boards that you've drawn. They may stretch directly through the middle, or they might stretch cutting off just the angles on the edges. And with each stroke, if you come across any band or bar that you've previously drawn, just pause your pen stroke for a moment and imagine as if that stroke falls beneath any previous band or board that's been drawn, starting to create a layering effect. If you're drawing sort of in the negative space, the same thing applies, but just stretching from the edges of the orb to the edges of your border. Slowly allowing your pen to create a beautiful straightish line and then a beautiful paralleling line to create a band or board. And then just slowly turning your tile and breathing. Ever so slowly watching your pen drag the ink across the paper, allowing yourself to just focus on that one stroke at hand, taking comfort in the little shakes and imperfections that make that stroke yours, the unpredictable, beautiful life in each stroke. How amazing is it that nobody could exactly replicate how each one of us sounds or how each one of us looks, and they also can't replicate the exact movements that make up all of our creative expression. Taking your time and breathing, allowing yourself a moment here and there to wiggle your fingers, roll your shoulders back, take a breath, or maybe just smile. Taking comfort in the extra sounds here and there, or maybe the quiet. Turning your tile after each board, maybe pausing to admire where you're at. We're repeating the same steps, but it's funny how each time we experience these boards or strokes, it feels slightly different. There's something unique about each time. It becomes familiar, but also a little bit different. You might explore the bands or boards getting slightly wider or slightly thinner. Maybe you start to find rhythm. Hollibaugh is such an exciting tangle because it's organized chaos. At first you might say, this doesn't look like a pattern, but it's repetitive and it's formulaic, but it's hard to break down once it's finished. It's hard to duplicate exactly because its repetition is scattered and unknown and exciting. It goes beyond what you see. There's depth and interest. Continue to turn your tile and breathe, finding little spaces to fill, perhaps looking at your tile this way and that. If you're filling the center of your tile where your orb is, you may start to get a sense of how your composition is kind of coming together in this sort of bundle. And if you're working the exterior, the background, you may start to see something else, this beautiful sort of blank orb that the background is holding in. And with each new band or bar you put down, you see more support and more structure. Turning your tile each time and breathing. Not having to plan out every stroke on this tile at once, but just trusting that with each new stroke you put down, and with deliberate confidence, the next one will make sense. Maybe we all just need to focus on that one stroke and trust that the next one will come to us. And if we can just put all of our efforts into this one stroke and then worry about the next one, finding something beautiful in each simple inked line, maybe sort of forcing ourselves to find comfort in our imperfected lines, and noticing how when they work together, it seems to actually just be fine. Turning your tile, watching the spaces close in, how all the strokes are slowly working together, and breathing, remembering that breath, how it sort of changes the way our pen strokes go down, guides our hands, calms our nerves. finding ourselves having to pick up our pen more and more time as the new strokes we put down are hidden further and further back behind. Perhaps you're at a point where you're starting to feel like maybe you've put enough down and that your orb is wound tight enough, or the spaces, if you're working in the negative space, are filled in. Allow yourself as much time as you need. This isn't a race, and you can't even see what I'm doing, so I'm not sure it matters at all. And perhaps giving yourself that moment here, turn your twile this way and that a few more times, trying to figure out if there's another little space or a little spot you've missed. Or perhaps you feel like you're just good. So I've gotten to a point where I'm kind of enjoying exactly where my tile is at. And I'm going to add a little detail on mine, and I invite you to do the same if you'd liked. And I think I'm going to start by trying to locate one of those first bands I put down, and you can usually find it because it's the one that has no interruption in it. And I look at that band or bar, and I allow my eyes to sort of settle in on where it hits my string line or my edge of my orb, whether you've used the background or within the orb. And I'm going to just cap off the end of it. And I'm going to do that with like a slightly rounded stroke. So again, I'm just looking at the edge of that board where it hits the string line, and I'm going to cap it off with just a slightly rounded line. So it almost gives it the illusion that it's hugging that orb. It's just a slightly curved line that caps off that band or board, and it really gives it the illusion as if it's hugging and supporting that orb. I'm going to do it to another one here. I'm going to find that band or board seems to attaching itself to the string, and right where it attaches itself to the string, I'm going to cap it off with a little slightly curved line. And this, I guess, is optional. I guess anything's optional. But if you like to try along, just find the edge where that orb is and just cap it off with a slightly curved line. I love how this kind of pulls the Hollibaugh together as if it's like holding this orb, cradling it. And I'm just working my way around the orb, or if you're working the border, around the border. And it's just a slightly curved line that caps off each Hollibaugh. Such a difference the slight curve makes. Just working my way around and around. Until I get all of the Hollibaughs capped off. It's just a little detail that kind of changes the way it looks. All right, and this may give you an opportunity to maybe go back in and say, I want to add another board here or there. Or maybe you're kind of enjoying where it's all at. I'm going to cap my pen. I'm going to pick up my pencil. I'm just using a graphite pencil here. And I'm going to add a little bit of shading. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around the edges of my orb, or if you're working the border, it works both ways. I'm just going to add a nice bit of dark graphite sort of in between where the Hollibaugh is, and I'm going to right on the edges of that string line to create the edge of that sphere. So if you worked inside the orb, you'll add the graphite on the inside and of that orb. And if you worked on the negative space, you would then add the graphite on the negative space. And of course, with any Zentangle, you might say, I see an opportunity to do it a different way. And I would invite you to do that too. Because there's so many different ways to see this. And it might have been that halfway through this tile, you started in a different direction because you were inspired or you saw something else happening. And that's amazing too. And so your shading opportunities might be so different. And none of it is wrong, and all of it is just so great to get you here, putting pen to paper and creating. And it's kind of cool when you know that a bunch of other people are creating too, along with you. So I've worked my graphite all the way along the edges, kind of creating a little bit of substance for my orb or the area around it, whatever you decided. And then I'm going to go back in with my blending stump, and I'm going to kind of ease that beautiful graphite into the orb, sort of watching it have this dark graphite color around the edge and allowing it to fade as it walks its way into the center. I like to have a lot of that dark graphite towards the edge of the shape I'm working on, kind of defines it, and then slowly fades as it works its way towards the middle. I like to put my graphite down in layers. I often tell my students that a pencil is this amazing tool that has like 1,000 different colors in one tool. It has the lightest, almost wisping gray to white to an almost black graphite color. It's that one tool that gives you all that, which is brilliant. So once you have kind of the edges of your orb or the edges of your border, whichever one you're working, sort of identified with the pencil, you can then go back and again with your pencil and maybe add some little shadow lines where some of your bands overlap, or if not, or maybe you like to shade other places you kind of see opportunities for. At this point, we are so far into our work that you're owning much more of it, and your decisions are so reflective on where your tile has gone. I like sometimes putting down a little bit of graphite on either side of some of the boards that seem to be up towards the top. Maybe you want to ink in all the background. It takes forever, but sometimes it just calls your name and you have this beautiful contrasting work. I sometimes get lost in a tile for hours and hours and hours, but it's sort of what I needed at that time. Wherever this tile takes you is fine. You may be thinking that this isn't going to look anything like what yours looks like. And I kind of hope that it doesn't. So I invite you to continue adding your graphite here and there, turning your tile this way and that, and then finding yourself as a stopping point. We finish our Zentangle experiences sort of how we started, putting our initials maybe on the front, our names on the back, and then allowing time for gratitude and appreciation, allowing yourself to look at your artwork, maybe look back at the time, and maybe revisit whatever it is you were grateful for today. I hope you enjoyed this voice-guided Zentangle class with me today. I sure enjoyed being with all of you today, and I would love, love, love to see what you all created. You can share it with me on our app using this hashtag, or maybe share it with others on other social media, whatever it is that works for you. And if you just want it for yourself, that's totally fine too, because I think that's pretty awesome. Thank you so much for being part of our amazing Zentangle community, and I look forward to doing this again with you all someday soon. Take care.